Well, hello there and welcome. My name is Brenda Williams, and I am the founder of Culture Shifters Unite. We're a multimedia womanist platform that uses placemaking, storytelling, communal care as a way of being. And we do this through the Brenda Williams Show, talk show, where empathy meets power and voices spark change, the Soul of a Leader podcast for she who lives and works from the soul, and of course, our signature event, Unnetworking. And it is just that. We come to see who you are, not what you do. It's not a place for performance. It is a place of revealing. I've been really touched by this lesson personally this week, and it's around attunement. And what I needed to do, or what I've been working on, is reorientation about where I have my focus, what and who has my attention. And so most teachers start with gratitude. And these days, because I'm a caregiver, I'm also a very real entrepreneur. My mind is always in 20 million places. So I need to find a way to quickly reset, reorient it, ground, and center. And gratitude is great. I'm not saying eliminate your gratitude list. But what I found, the true underneath the gratitude or the purpose of the gratitude list is to reorient your mind to the truth. Because what we focus on expands. And so this really came from our Soft Power Sunday, where I wrote about attunement. And I've been thinking more about what comes after that idea. Because one thing we should listen to is, are we performing or are we being? And it's one thing to practice it, right? Because we want to, of course, move our money, right? Have a full calendar. Be responsible for the things and people that we have been given charge over. When you have good ideas, and I mean, all of them likely could be the thing that you should be doing next, but I don't believe on shoulding. We have to get quiet to the still point and understand what is ours to do. So I've been practicing this, like I said, y'all, in real time. I realize that attunement is rhythm. So notice, listen, discern, respond. So when we go to a performance, an orchestral event, or it's a concert, there's a tuning. You can hear the instruments tuning up. There's a sound check. And there's a reason why we want to check the sound. And we also want to measure against the other instruments, right? Before that first note, when the conductor comes up to the podium, the attunement is because the orchestra, the band, must be in relationship to the other sounds. If not, then we have dissonance. So relationship matters to sound. Each musician has an instrument, and the musician, of course, knows how to play his instrument, but each instrument must make a sound on its own. So we're not just merely listening, right, to whether they sound good, or whether they're not listening to whether they sound good. They're listening for their relationship to self, yes, in that real time moment, but their relationship to the sound of the band, of the orchestra, of the vocalist to whom they may be playing for. That's why we must be in attunement, right? Because they're listening for how they sound to the whole. And I think that that's something that also resides in our leadership. Notice. So I've noticed what's actually happening in my life instead of immediately trying to change it. Because sometimes we notice through judgment. We see it and we start calling things. I'm behind. I should have done more. This should be finished already. But that's not really noticing, that's interpretation. And particularly as we move through grief, I'm moving through active grief. My beloved Senora, I met her when I was 15 years old. She was my very first Spanish teacher, and she became non-responsive a few weeks ago. And she did go pretty quickly. And when I got back I went to see her before I made a drive to Chicago. And I read her Llanto por Ignacio Sánchez Mejía. A las 5 de la tarde. You're familiar with that poem, but it's a poem by Federico Garcia Lorca. And I read that poem to her. Even though she was not responsive, I still know that her heart was there. Her, some neurological factors were there. So I read to her anyway. And last week, Tuesday, I got the call that she made her transition and her funeral was Friday. I was nothing last week. I was flattened. I'm already a caregiver. This Thursday rather, would have been my mother's birthday, July 30th. So I'm very aware of the compounded grief and that idea that I needed to do more, be more. I had to change my interpretation. I had to sit with what's true. What really requires my attention? What has changed? What needs to change? What capacity do I actually have? What capacity do you actually have? What has happened that's not part of the plan? And before I decide to give meaning to something, what can't I see? What must I see? And can I really see it for what it truly is? That has mattered more for me in this season than I can even explain to you, because that's how I'm moving right now. The things that I'm building, the things that need funding, the people I need to contact, work that needs to move, and urgency. Oh my goodness, urgency is such a tool of white supremacist delusion. When I really sat back and zoomed out for everything, no one, and I mean no one, was going to pass away as a result of my lack of productivity. And urgency has been something that our culture has normalized. ASAP, by close of business. Sometimes those are very real expectations. So we have to move at the pace and grace of life. And so I have to witness before I can sequence things and prioritize things, and then listen, not only to other people, but to the work, to my spirit, to the numbers, to my own capacity, to what keeps returning, right? To what feels out of tune. And sometimes listening changes the assignment. And I experienced this. I had an idea about what could generate some immediate revenue, and it wasn't a bad idea. It made sense. But there was something about it that just wasn't sitting right with me. And so instead of immediately executing it, I listened. I listened to what spirit would have me do. And what became clear to me was there was another revenue pathway that was already connected to the work. And that really did require my attention more than the area or the way that I wanted to go. And that doesn't mean the need disappeared. It just means I had to reorient because I had to listen. And so my relationship to the need changed. And that's important because attunement isn't pretending that circumstances are not real. It's listening closely, right? Ever so closely enough that urgency is not what propels us forward to make every decision. It's discernment. So how do we discern? This may be the hardest part because after I noticed, I listened, and I still had to decide what is mine to do. Every good idea is not an assignment, and every opportunity is not an assignment. Because there were some requests that I got this week that, yes, it might create some great visibility. Maybe it might create some great partnerships, but I had to run it against my own value system and also my capacity. So every need is not mine to meet. Every possibility does not belong to this season. That's discernment. Sometimes discernment means saying yes, send the proposal, make the phone call. Yes, ask for the partnership, finish the page. Sometimes it means not yet. Sometimes it means not me. Sometimes it means this matters, but it doesn't belong at the top of the list for today. And that too is leadership. Because capacity isn't just about how much we can carry. Capacity is also knowing what I should not be carrying. And then we have respond. Then I act. We act. This is important because attunement isn't endless contemplation. Eventually, you play a note. It's the top of the hour and the show must go on. But now the response comes from what you've noticed, heard, and discerned, not simply from urgency. I have work that needs to happen this week, as we all do. Attunement doesn't mean that we sit around thinking about the work. It means that we get a clearer, more resonant way forward, even if it's to pause or even if it's to terminate. We decide in that moment what needs to move forward, right? And so that distinction I'm moving through, and it's changing how I'm moving in the work. Because reaction says something needs to happen, do something, but response asks, given what I know, right? What I've discerned, what I've witnessed, what is mine to do next? And it might be one email, it might be one phone call, it might be a conversation, one decision, one boundary, one request for help. You don't always need the entire score. Sometimes you need the next note. And then you listen again. Notice, listen, discern, respond. Notice again, listen again, discern again, respond again. That's why I don't think that I don't think of this as a 4-step framework, because the steps might resequence themselves or reorient themselves, or there might be a part that you need to go back to, right? It's a practice. It's an attuned practice. Just like physicians practice medicine and attorneys practice law, well, we too have an awareness practice, right? On top of, I hope, your spiritual practice. So we need a rhythm because conditions change. We change. People change, right? Seasons change. And leadership has to remain responsive enough to hear that change. So if you've been trying to make something perform, your team, your business, your body, your creativity, your relationship, yourself, before more output, ask please. Is something here asking for attunement? What's true? What am I hearing? What does this moment require? What is mine to do next? And then play the note that's yours. So I am Brenda Williams, founder of Culture Shifters Unite, and this is Field Notes from the Cultural Codex. And I'll leave you with this question, the question of the week. What needs attunement before you ask it to perform? All right, good humans. I hope you enjoyed this week's Field Note. Drop me a line and let me know how this resonated with you. For more, come back here to my YouTube channel frequently. I do these attunements or field notes from the Cultural Codex at least once a week, but more deeply, my work is engaged on Substack, and that's where you can find me most often is on Substack, and become a paid subscriber. Help to support not just my work, but your deeper unfoldment. This is a place for contemplation. I create guides for us to move forward, or checklists or awarenesses that we use for each of the lessons, so that your support is richer and a little deeper. But tune in to my Substack for more details and more info. And of course, share this with someone else that you know, especially, we're in a group chat. But share this with your teams, share this with your loved ones, share this with your community, because we all need a place and space where we can dive a little bit deeper and make our lives a little bit more richer. And definitely leadership that is culturally responsive. All right, good humans. Bye for now. And I will see you all next week.